Hello, friends. This is the Note Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Kohlberg, and today I'm inviting a guest, Raquel. Actually, Raquel's your middle name. I love that you go by your middle name. It's Miriam's your first name, is it? Miriam Raquel Sands. And before we even start and say anything, I need to ask, are you a Friends fan?
Yes.
Okay, because before we hit record, when we were talking about what we're going to chat about today, you said about helping people make pivots. Now, do you know the scene I'm referring to? Pivot? No, it's all good. It's in Friends.
Ooh.
I haven't watched all of it. I'm a pseudo Friends fan, but there's this
I
one
was gonna
scene
say.
where Ross and Chandler and Rachel are moving a couch
Okay.
into the apartment. So anyone listening to this, even if you're not a Friends fan, I swear if you Google Friends Pivot, and if I remember, I'll put it in the show notes, you'll find the scene, because whether or not you're a fan, it's a funny episode, scene. And they're trying to move this couch up the stairs and there's not enough space. And Ross is kind of going, pivot, pivot, pivot. And Chandler's like, I am pivoting. And when you were saying that you help people pivot with their careers or your life choices and stuff, that scene just came to mind. It was all I could not to just do burst out laughing. People must think I'm so weird, but it's how my brain goes. But the other thing that you said that I start the listeners were thinking about is, in days of old, you didn't say it like this. This is Susan's interpretation. We grew up, we went to school. If we were lucky, we went to college or university, depending on where you are in the world. We left college or university with a bloody great debt. And then we spent the next however long paying that debt down. We positioned ourselves in one career forevermore. And if we were really lucky, we got to stay at that one place all the way through to retirement. And I don't know about the US, but in Australia, after 10 years, you get what's called long service leave. So you get extra 3 months of paid holiday. So people would accrue long service leave, and then that's it, right off into the sunset forevermore. Now, I don't think that model has worked. I don't know about ever, but especially since the rise of the internet, because in days of old, you could only really get educated in your locale because we didn't connect with people all around the world. So as soon as the internet became a thing, I think there was a decrease, not in the need, and this is not bashing university, college, or anything like that. Like, if you have a set career path, like if you want to be a brain surgeon, please don't say, I watched a YouTube video. Like,
no.
All of this to say, Raquel, tell us about what it is that you do, how that you're passionate about, people, the career path. Because the other thing that you said was job hopping. Like, what if it's not a bad thing? Because I think so many people have shame about that because their parents or grandparents have said, what are you going to do when you grow up? I'm 40 and I still don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. Just saying.
No, absolutely. There's so many. So I want to follow up with the Friends thing because I feel like I'm also a pseudo semi Friends. I tried watching all of them. I think they had them on Netflix at some point.
I think they are. I got to season 2 and I couldn't do anymore. So I just kind of jump in and out.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing that came to me with Friends was, I think, Rachel's kind of story arc, where she started with very little and then she did kind of make her way up in the fashion industry. So I don't know if that's a good analogy as to what I do, but I like her character because she starts from ground zero and she kind of starts to make her own pivots and makes her own adjustments. And so for me, I went to college. I'm born and raised in the US, but my families are immigrants, so they're from Central America, which adds like another nuance to being a United States person and understanding education. That's a whole other ball of wax, I think is the expression. And I didn't know. I changed my degree 3 times. I jokingly, lovingly say with my family and friends that I've had like 20 jobs in the span of 10 years. I've had more than 2-3 jobs in the same time. So I feel like I've done so many things, lived so many lives, because I feel like this pressure of you need to get there. You need to know what you want. Once you know what you want, you just settle, whether that's in a cubicle, professional, corporate environment, whether that's going back to school and getting a graduate degree. And none of that worked for me. And I've done all the personality tests and astrology and like all of these things. because there's this expectation, I think, really unrealistic expectation of we're supposed to know. And once you know, then everything just
Unlocks.
figures out.
There's a secret key that nobody that every it's kind of like a secret society thing. Like what's the
Yeah,
secret handshake knock kind of password, and then
exactly.
you're in, but nobody's actually going to help you. And then one day
Mhm.
you realize there is no secret society handshake knock thing. Or even if you do find the cubicle job, like it's funny, I am what my husband lovingly refers to as the hummingbird because I flit around. And as you said, how many jobs you've had, I've probably had just as many and often multiple at the same time because I get bored. But anyway,
Yeah.
he's more like a jackhammer. He's done the one thing and he stayed it. He did his engineering degree. He rode off into the sunset. He loves
Yeah.
engineering. But
Yes.
even within that one career, he's worked for places
Mm.
where the place has gone bankrupt. So he's lost a job, not that
Yeah.
he's done anything wrong, but the mother
Yeah.
company is no more. Or
Right.
he works in power. With the uptake of solar, they didn't need as many generators, so they downsized. So sometimes I think
Mm.
the secret key handshake thing we want because we think it gives us a level of safety or certainty. But even in a
Right.
career that's safety and certain, there still can be pivots within that. Like he still does that as a job, but we've moved
Yeah.
around a lot for the one
Right.
industry. Like his long service leave packet has never been come to
Wow.
fruition, even though he's been in the industry over 20 years
Wow. Oh
because you
my
need to work at the
God.
same place.
Wow. Yes, exactly. And I think that's the myth, the mythology is like there is a guarantee. Like if you do just kind of suck it up, endure it, you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I don't know if I've put myself in risk situations, but I feel like I've been able to again pivot and make the changes.
Every
We're
time you
just
say
gonna
that now,
kill
you're going
this.
to think,
We're gonna kill this horse.
pivot!
Yeah, the poor horse, the pivot horse. But yeah, I think it's so essential with the internet nowadays, because I think with COVID, people didn't know that hybrid was a thing and it made it a thing. YouTube making passive income, however passive we want to
It's
think is
hundreds of hours
passive.
in the making, but yes, still passive. But the thing is, you
Yeah.
do it once and you get dividends. Like even a book, I wrote a book, I still get royalties. It's not heaps, but when I get that, $50 to $100 a month, I'm like, oh yeah, that's nice. And now I'm not doing anything for it, even though hundreds of hours went into the creation of it. So
Right.
it's a different world to the traditional. Then you get the job and you do the 9 to 5 and you get paid those hours. Things like
Yeah.
YouTube, you could record a video that is popular and
Yeah.
continues to be popular. Like I know a lady who gets hundreds of dollars a month from this one video that has reached over millions of people and people still watch it because once you've reached the top of the Google, like don't ask me about SEO and how it works. I've got a rough idea. But like
Yeah.
if you're the one that when people are searching X, your video pops up,
Yeah. Yeah.
you sense there every watch.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's kind of where I try to be the middle ground is like, okay, either if you're not into career searching or like career switching yet, you're still kind of content in your corporate world. How can you prepare yourself to make those changes and adapt? Because here in the US, we don't get paid time off unless the company is so lovingly does it. It's not a
So you don't
legal
get
requirement.
holiday pay as part of your like agreements? I find that
It's not a legal
fascinating.
binding. It's not a legal binding. I've had
Oh.
contracts where no federal holidays, no PTO, no sick leave. So you can be on contract for a year and not have any time at all unless you decide to take a pay cut or they don't pay you for that hours. So it becomes a real necessity of what is it that is right for me and my lifestyle. If we have family, if we want to have family, if we want to live far because the living wage is ridiculous and people can't afford housing, like people have to start making serious choices, decisions in order to afford and, think about, I don't know, whatever the career they want
I
going
was
back to school.
having
So
this
it's,
discussion with someone who recently, so I live in Sydney, which is one of the most expensive places to live in Australia.
mm, mm,
And there are suburbs where people are priced out, as in like they can't afford to live there. But those suburbs still need, they have a supermarket, they have a childcare center, they have, so people
right,
need to work in these places, but they can't
right.
afford to live there on the money that they
Yeah,
make. So
exactly.
then they're, what do you call it? The word's failing me, like on the train for 2 3 hours each way,
Yeah,
each
yeah,
day,
yeah.
transit, the transit time is just exhausting. And
Yes,
I think,
exactly.
you don't think about that because, the suburb might be affluent, full of famous people or Hollywood stars, or this is, Hollywood in the
Right,
whatever, but
right,
they
right,
still got to buy groceries or go to the doctor or,
right.
get a haircut or something.
Yes. No, exactly. And I think that's where I've I don't know, shied away from the word selfish, but I think people have to be selfish, self-centered in their career decisions. It's not about what it looks like on LinkedIn or, okay, I've appeared to be in 5 years, I'm solid. Like, no, I mean, this career is not working for you anymore. So what do you really have to do, for better or worse, in order to make it work for you?
I like
Um,
the term self first. I often say
mm,
self first isn't selfish, because
yes,
if
I
you
love
are sometimes, so many times people, even I'm sure you've experienced it, or if not, you will soon. I get it often. People will offer you something for the exposure. They're like,
that.
I've got a list of 5,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 people. Like, imagine the exposure your show or your channel or whatever will get. And I'm like, yeah, exposure don't pay my bills. Exposure doesn't pay my
Right.
rent. Like, exposure doesn't put food on the table. Like, I'm not saying don't, not ever, but really weigh
Right.
up, what are they requiring of you? How many
Right.
hours, how many emails, how many this, and get really
Yeah.
clear, because sometimes something looks really good. And it's, for
Yeah.
me personally, what's always been hilarious is the bigger the platform, the less the return, because there's just hundreds of thousands of people on there doesn't mean that they're engaging. Whereas somebody with a
Right.
small show invites me on, like, I never say how much your numbers and downloads. When people ask me that, I kind of laugh. I'm like, vanity stat. But the
Right.
smaller the show, the bigger the return, because then they actually
Yeah.
get to know the host and everything. But this is
Yes.
sidebarring from your conversation. But,
No, I love
the
that.
career, and the other thing I'll be interested to hear your take on, because you see so many people when they want to
Mm.
start a business kind of go all in. Like, I'm going to quit my job and
Right.
I'm going to be an
Right.
influencer or whatever.
Right.
And what's your take on that? Because that's high risk.
Yes, no, and so for me, I feel like I was lucky in some ways that my dad was a businessman. He came to this country and he's like, no, I don't want to work for somebody else. So he learned all these trades. He became a professional handyman, but he created kind of his own trade school, vocational school, where he would teach other men and certify them and all this stuff. So I was inspired by that, but I did work professionally as a marketing person for many years. But then when COVID hit, I got laid off, and I said, okay, let me see how I can rework this, because I did freelancing a little bit, and let me just take a big step. So that was me taking a risk and putting myself first. Because I think at the time we also in the United States we were getting some support financially. So I got to pay off my loan. It wasn't a burden. And that's something about business building is we need to figure out the accessibility. Where are we in our life, that where can we invest our time, our energy? So for me, I started, but that's something that I always have in the back of my mind when I work with some of my clients is maybe you can't leave your job yet, but have you prepared your plan B? Where are you with savings? I mean, that was a huge statistic that came out, I think, in COVID. People were not prepared. People aren't prepared for emergencies because we're living hand to mouth, which is super
Yes.
unfortunate, given that we're earning money, but where's our money going? Um, and yeah, I think that business and any side hustle is not to be taken lightly, because I think that I don't like this idea of putting all these different energies out there. Like I like to be focused and intentional. And I want that for my clients and the audience as well, is that they're not, oh, I need to do this thing now also. And it's another survival mechanism. Like that's just that sounds so draining.
No,
So
think
coming
about it. How many people take the
mm,
advice, quit their job, go all in, and then what
yeah,
they do is they're like, okay, I'm going to make an Instagram, I'm going to make a TikTok, I'm going to make a YouTube, I'm going to get on LinkedIn, I'm going to have Facebook. And
yeah.
I just feel exhausted just labeling all those. And I don't know about anyone else, but my experience, because, I wasn't quite on all of them, but I was early on. Like you go to a networking and someone go, I'm having such great success with it, with, and what's it
Yeah.
called? X now. It was Twitter. And you're like,
Right.
okay, I'll start a Twitter. And you go to a different networking and someone's like, oh my gosh, I have so much thing with Periscope, or now it would be Threads. Okay, I'm gonna have a Threads. And then all you do is have a multiple number of platforms to get spam on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then you get drained, and then there's this comparison trap and the rat race again, but in a whole other way. Like if we were trying to do the corporate thing and catching up, or I think there's like that expression, keeping up with the Joneses, then we're
Yes.
doing that also with social media
And also,
and
does that
business.
actually bring you any money? Like, it's funny
It,
now when sometimes people message me or they'll say, like, I looked you up on LinkedIn, like, you don't have a LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm not stressed about it. You don't
yeah,
post on
thank you.
Facebook anymore. Yeah, I know. It's like
Yeah.
I've chosen YouTube and podcast and newsletter. That's my trifecta, and I'm done. Thank you very much. And people will be like, oh, but you could hire a social media manager, you could hire all this. And I'm not saying that you can't, but the thing you've got to think about is how
Mm,
much is your bottom line going to expand to? Do you have the wherewithal capacity to manage a team? Do you even have the desire to that? And like, I did have a social media manager. Shout out to her. She was amazing. But that added over $1,000 I had to make each month to pay her before I
mm.
paid me, and wasn't
Right.
actually bringing in any leads to offset it. So sometimes, and I think sometimes we look to people, Tony Robbins, Brene Brown,
Mm,
Oprah.
mm,
Yeah, they've
right.
got a team for everything. I'm sure they have somebody who opens their emails, and like they have gatekeepers, all of that. I don't know
Right.
about you, but I sure as shit don't have the funds for that.
No, and that sounds exhausting. Like I decided to go down this business route because I realized, okay, part of the whole corporate wheel that wasn't working for me was I'm an introvert. I really don't like people coming up to me at random times of the day. Like, leave me alone. I want my space. I don't like the commute. I don't think that the salary was benefit, like the pros and cons was not making sense for me.
Yeah, the
Um,
math was not
love
mathing.
working
The
from
cost benefit
yeah,
analysis was like, this is not worth it. I think that's the thing. Cost,
yeah,
sometimes we go, oh, it's going to pay this, and we only
yeah,
look at money. But
yeah,
but as a fellow introvert, how much
yeah,
energy, how many
yeah,
spoons for me to leave the house and
yeah.
do up my appearance so I'm profesh, and to
Right,
actually have people coming up to me like I don't now. It's just like if it's in person, it's a no from me,
yeah,
because it doesn't matter how much it pays. Like, I'm sure there
yeah,
would be a fuck off price if someone's like $1 million for this. I'm like, okay, I'm in. But most people don't. They shortchange themselves, and they don't
yes,
factor in like people. I know some people who've had some amazing in-person speaking opportunities, but then when you
yeah,
maths the hotel accommodation, the flight,
mm,
the train, the travel, how many hours being away from your business to go to this event. Say they
right,
paid you $500 or $1,000, but and
right,
for me, I'd need a day either side to like recharge. You've got to factor
right.
that into your pricing as well.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's what it started to happen with me at work. Like I was thinking, okay, where can I find a nap corner? Where can I decompress? Where can I just find time? Because I started all those personality tests and everything did come in handy. That I realized that I can't just have three monitors, like God forbid, in a work environment, you have to be immersed in that world. You have to be in a cubicle. You have to have see people all the time. You have to have multiple gadgets with you. And I was just like, I can't. This is too much for my brain, too much exposure. And all of that, like the environment, the types of people, office politics, and like butt kissing and people pleasing. I was like, oh, please, like
Corporate
someone
ladder
take.
climbing. Stabbing in the back sometimes too, sometimes malicious, sometimes just
Yeah.
opportunistic.
Yes. And so I just thought this is not even work related. I just wanted to do the work and get paid and get out, and none of that. And then all of that is just stifling for people who are creative, for people who really want to grow in whatever shape or form. All of that is inhibits it's like disheartening. So anyways, all of those kind of symptoms really help me see like, okay, I'm on the right path of being a job hopper because any recruiter interviewer that I've had, they really don't care. You give them this sounds horrible, don't do this, but you give them an explanation of like, okay, I was doing there was a personal situation, however transparent we want to be in that moment, but there's an explanation is what I'm saying. And so people don't dig too deep, and you get the job because they want to hire just as much you want to get paid. And I was really able to just do the loopholes and find the loopholes in the system Because if the system isn't working for us, then we need to make our own or find the bandages, find the ways. Yeah, because I don't know who this system worked for.
But also, I don't
um,
think the job hopper thing gets as much bad rap in
mm,
actuality as it does in
mm,
our heads or conditioning from our parents or grandparents. Because
that's
I
true.
think about, as I said, my husband traditionally employed,
Yeah,
when you look at his resume, he technically has job hopped a lot. A couple of times it's been like just this wasn't a fit, that, he
yeah,
didn't flourish in this environment. But a lot of the time there was
right.
external things. And if people do ask, sometimes recruiters and that do,
Mm,
and he'll say,
mm,
this has happened or that's happened, that'll be enough to satisfy it. Like, I think there's a
right.
difference between job hopping as in not turning up and being fired and not being
Right.
fit for it and being a flake, because sometimes I think that's what people are worried about, looks like flaky,
Word. Yes.
versus like we moved home or external things happened, or even if you take a lot of time off, like if you've had a grief thing or you've been a carer, like you can explain it, but don't over explain. Like, I'd wait for them to
Yeah.
ask. But as you said, at the end of the day, they're looking for a role to fill. Are you a
Yes, exactly.
suitable candidate? And I don't know about the US, but here in Australia now, a lot of them don't hire straight up. They will do a contract first. So then they don't
Oh.
actually technically need to fire you. So you'd be put on for
Um,
like 6 months or 12 months as a contract. And then
okay.
the offer of the so a lot of people would, and then if you, sometimes people like to travel. So I'll do 6 months here and
Yeah,
6 months there. Like in the doctoring
yeah,
world, in the medical world, you'd have a
yeah.
locum who'd only do, or a locum pharmacist. So I think
Right,
that
right,
that's
right.
becoming more commonplace in all sorts of jobs. So people
Yeah.
can technically be paid to travel.
Yes, no, and I love that. And I think that's kind of the question that I really hope people just I think reflect is like what is the lifestyle that I want? Because I think before the question was what's going to pay me or how can I just settle? But now I think the question is more so, well, what is actually the life I'm trying to build for myself? Do I want to have a family? Because if I do, then it's like, okay, maybe I do need more security for a certain amount of time or I can build up this reservoir. Or if I don't, if I just love traveling, then at
Yeah,
least
well,
for me,
instead
that's what.
of like
Mhm.
in days of old, especially if you said you guys don't have paid holidays and stuff, I imagine what would have had to have happened is you work in your one job, you save your buffer. When you get to the amount, you take the time off unpaid, then you travel, and then you come back.
Yeah,
Now think about it. Say you were traveling several states away, there'd be a day
right.
or two lost to travel on either side. Whereas if you're like,
Exactly.
actually, for my career, I can work from anywhere. I can be remote, like I can dial in remote,
Exactly.
or I could do periods at different, like it's a school teacher, a nurse. You could be like, so I'm going to technically be paid to travel because I'm going to move to this state, live there
Yeah.
for a year or two, work,
Yeah.
and then I'm already in the space. Like people do that from Australia. They go backpack around Europe or
I
New
love
Zealand or
that.
wherever all the
Oh
time.
my God. Yeah, I love that. No, I love that. Yeah. And I have a favorite Australian show called Offspring. It was on
Oh,
Hulu or
yes.
Netflix. Yeah. We
Oh,
love that.
that's sad towards the end. Whenever I see the bloke actor, whatever his name is, in something else, I just cry. I'm like, oh, Patrick.
Oh, I know it's Nina. Yeah. I know we're rewatching it. My mom introduced us to it, and because I feel like I love watching different things from all over the world. I listen to French music, Portuguese. I don't speak anything, but just the energy, the pronunciation. So anyways, that's one of my favorite, and I think maybe the only. Well, we're watching Love Island Australia now, also,
Oh, I've never
which
I've
is
never
a
gotten
whole
into those.
different thing.
I'm a reality fan, but I've never
Yeah.
crossed the path of the Love Island as of yet.
Oh my
But if you like Australian shows, not reality, you might like it's an old one, probably about the same age as Offspring. Packed to the Rafters. Check that one out. Packed to
Okay,
the
I'm going to.
Rafters.
Oh, I
Yeah, I
love
really
that.
enjoy
Yeah.
that one. Another one similar, not same, but one of the main characters will have a similar story arc to Patrick, and you'll be like, oh no, I'm gutted.
Oh,
But
no. All over again.
you get to, I think the point that I'm taking away from what you're saying, and
Mm.
be interested to see what the listeners are taking away, because we all taste something different. We all go watch the same movie or listen to the same show and have a totally different
Yeah,
experience. But
yeah.
decide or even contemplate what it is
Mm.
that you want to do, because I think, so many of us, we lose sight that we create our lives. When we're stuck in the mold of go to school, go to college, get a job, work there forevermore, get a
Yeah.
house with a white picket fence and have 2.4 kids and a dog,
Right.
We're like, some people, and there's so many people now who are childless by choice, and they're like, actually, I don't want to have kids. Like, you do you. Or I
Yeah.
don't ever want to move. I like this model. This model feels good to me. Then do
Yeah.
that. Or like, it's
Exactly.
funny, there's somebody I saw them do it recently, like my ultimate desire, I would love, because my business is online, and now as the internet gets better and better quality, I can technically work from anywhere. I would
Oh,
love
yeah.
to do the world cruise, because then I could still work and run my calls and whatever. And I saw an influencer, like I'm nowhere near influencer status yet, and I don't think I'd ever want to be. Like, I don't want millions of people asking what I ate for breakfast, but anyway, each to their own.
Yeah, no,
But basically, they're doing the world cruise, and they're doing their little shorts and clips each day, and there's that sort of stuff. And I thought, you're funding your lifestyle by what you
exactly.
share. That's very clever.
Yes, exactly. And I think I saw a video also, I'm just remembering in COVID, there was this couple, they were about to retire because in the US you do get pension, but I think it's government funded. So if you stay in a government, I don't know, like the school district or something for a certain amount of time, you can get pension. But so much of, I think, the US model is that you work to get the benefits. So if you don't have a job, then you don't get the PTO or you don't get the health insurance. So where I'm going with this is that retirement is a thing that people count on Social Security, and we're getting a portion of our salary deducted every paycheck. But the question is whether my generation, or I think the next one also, Generation Z, whether we even have any in the US or how much will be allotted. So I was inspired by this couple that they said, we're just going to build our house, own the land, and that's our retirement, because whatever happens, you will have a place to stay. And I love that idea, because also knowing that houses are so ridiculously priced, living, just living is so ridiculously hard nowadays, that if you just have a place to stay, then you can find food, you can get food, you can have a garden, you can work online. Like, then the rest gets easier, but you've taken so much weight off of your shoulders. And I think that's kind of the thing I try to preach about with this career lifestyle, is that if you just kind of get your big blocks, your big building blocks in order as to how you want to live your life, then the career stuff and everything gets sorted, because you don't have to get into debt to go back to school. You don't have to stay in your job. Then you can make your moves because you already know what you're trying to achieve. It's working backwards. Like it literally is putting the cart before the horse. Don't get the horse first. You put the cart first. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for some people, going back to school 100% will be the right choice. But
Yeah.
sometimes I think it seems to be the easier choice, and
Yeah.
then we don't factor in the debt, like as in paying back of the study, but also
Right.
what career path does it open up? Like, there are some degrees, if you were going to study to be a veterinarian or a dentist, that's very clear.
Right.
Like, please don't go drill somebody's mouth unless you have the correct things to do so. But there are also
Right.
so many careers, as
Yes.
in study forms of study, that don't
Study.
actually
Yeah.
open up to anything. Like, my husband, what he wanted to study was
Mhm.
mathematics. He said,
Okay.
he loves maths. He goes, but a mathematician really only opens me up to being a mathematician, like, and that doesn't pay that much. So hence engineering is similar. So before you go and invest in the thing of study, is it
Yes.
actually leading to a viable career or something, that's going to help? Or is it just a
Right.
way that you tell yourself you're doing something? Because I'm famous for this. I'm working on my business today. I'm researching as I scroll Instagram and compare and despair. Or do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I'm getting organized as I just move stuff around that's not
Right.
actually important. Like, is the thing that you're doing going to
Yeah.
be income producing, like, directly? Is there a correlation? Or is there
Yeah.
like another pretty certificate that sits on your wall that does nothing?
Nothing. No, exactly. And I think that there was some book, I don't remember, probably another of these like self-help gurus, who's like, it's better to be a generalist than a specialist, because a generalist, you exactly can move and mobilize. And I feel like that was also my trick when I graduated, a degree in English, which doesn't mean very much, except it's just communications and how to write well and all of that. But it was very transferable. Like, I do think that I got a return on investment on that, because I was able
Yes.
to change so much. And every organization needs a writer, some way, shape, or
Yes.
form.
So
And I
sometimes
was
the
able,
generalist thing, but
Mhm.
also too, as long because
Yeah.
you did mention, I don't know if it was when we were chatting beforehand or in the email you sent me,
Mm,
that you went back and
mm,
did another degree. So like
yeah,
for a lot of the entrepreneurs or wannapreneurs, lovingly, no judgment
yeah.
listening to this, a trap I see people fall into is they do some
Mm,
sort of certification. Like firstly, is a
mm,
certification actually anything? Because like a lot of the entrepreneurial
right.
certifications are once again a way to make you feel better about yourself. And then they'll
Yes.
promise a business building module or they'll promise a this. Like
Yeah.
I can speak to this so well. Do you know how many certifications I have? Like I've listed a couple on my website, ones that I think are relevant to what I actually do. But there
Yeah.
are so many that you can just, and I remember one day my husband lovingly said to me, but it cut me to the core, Suze, do you
Oh,
have a business or an expensive hobby? And I was like, oh shit. Because, you know,
yeah.
and then you get so excited and their website looks so pretty and they promise the earth. And the thing is, it's not actually what do you need to do in whatever way, ask people to pay you and deal with the imminent rejection of people saying no, because that's going to happen. But also,
Right.
people will say yes.
Right. No, exactly. And I think starting the business journey, like there's so much out there. Oh, you need this for your business and you need this. And that's a whole other
Oh, we could
struggle.
do a
But
whole other conversation about that. And also
yes,
look at the costs of it too. Because when you think about it
yes,
in business, there's no end of, you know, ads or funnels or click things
yes,
or PDFs or the photos. Like I know some people who get their professional photos done all the time. Like all of these
yes,
things add up. And
add
all
up.
and everybody who does that thing is going to tell you that. The website person's going to tell you need a website. The SEO person's going to tell you need SEO. The branding
Yeah,
person's going to tell you need, you know, your colors. And then what
yes,
you really need is some sort of offer, a way for
yeah,
people to pay you, and then a way for
exactly.
you to get the word out there. It's actually kind of simple, but we complicate
Exactly.
it rather than, and I think
Yeah,
for a lot of people, especially the people I work with, because you know, I'm the note coach, it's the
yeah,
the people saying no or the inability to say no when someone's like, oh, how about you just do this?
right.
So keeping it simple. So we've gone
Yes.
like way longer than I normally do, which is
But
fine because you know it's my show. I can do what I like. And
I,
I'm sure if you're keen, we'll come back because there's so many more things we can talk about. But for
yes,
today, Raquel, let the listeners know because I know you mentioned you have a Google Doc, you have a website, like what it is that you actually do, how they can find you, and more about this Google Doc because that sounded really awesome.
yes. Okay, let me start with that because also, keeping things simple, that's kind of where the genesis or the like the seed of that idea came from. So I call myself a holistic career and lifestyle coach. I feel like the word holistic is used everywhere, but I really like it because I do incorporate some spirituality, some kind of somatic pieces because I think that's really important when we talk about career and getting into what feels good. I feel like people lose touch with their bodies. So I have a few offers. One is Find Your Inner Compass, where I do some somatic practices. Another one is reviewing the LinkedIn profile if they continue to stay within the corporate path, because not everyone needs to go into business or anything like that.
That is such a great point. Yes.
So I think this one is a really nice, quick, easy tool to kind of get our story, because I feel like something I preach about is that we're kind of actors when we go through interviews and we do that. We have to kind of put on a performance, so to speak. So I kind of help them do the interview prep, practice, get their story feeling good so that they feel confident. And about the Google Doc. So I don't have a newsletter because that's just another thing that I budgeting
I
and
love
everything.
that. It's like I'm not budgeting my time for this. 100%.
Yeah. But I still want to hear from people. So I'm like, let me do a confidential private Google document, which only I manage, but people can comment anonymously. And then I'll answer their questions. So that's the Google document. It's linked, I think, several times on my website because I'm trying to call attention to it. But people can find me on my website, which is my whole name, miriamraquelsands.com. I also have a podcast talking about career and all of the things, the nuances that we've kind of talked about on this episode. And yeah, I just really want to support people figuring out whether they're okay with where they're at. If they're not okay, what are their different options, because there are options out there, and maybe they don't need to make the big step now, but there are like little steps that they can take so that the bigger lifestyle can adjust. So
I think that's
yeah.
what gets overstated. Sometimes the big step seems so far away that we never
Mm,
actually take the little step. So people working
little.
with you, and I love how you do LinkedIn review because the thing that came to mind when you were talking about it, do you ever watch the Mighty Ducks movies?
Oh, yeah. I just
I watched an article about, or read an article, I should say, about that very recently, and they were saying that the majority of the child actors seriously overstated their ability to skate when they applied to be on that movie, and I just laughed really hard. So it's like getting a LinkedIn profile that actually represents you, and you don't end up in a situation where, like, yeah, sure, I can ride a horse or whatever, and you're like, yeah, no, like maybe one of those ones at the show that's stationary. So thank you so much. And your podcast is Design Plus, is that correct?
Yes.
And for anyone listening, it's design with the plus sign, not PLUS when you're searching
Yes.
it up.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for
Yeah.
joining me today. I'll put your links and stuff in the show notes. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.